I flew into Atlanta on a Thursday. The air was thick with the promise of summer, heavy and wet, the kind of air that clings to your skin like a second shirt. I carried one suitcase and a garment bag. Inside the garment bag was my suit. It was a good suit, a dark charcoal wool, single-breasted. I had bought it for my wife's funeral. That was 10 years ago. It had served me for every important occasion since. Weddings of nieces, the baptisms of grandnephews, and 2 other funerals. It was the suit of a man who has seen things. The fabric held the faint, clean scent of cedar from my closet. It was a respectful suit, a serious suit. My son, David, was supposed to pick me up. I stood outside baggage claim, watching the endless parade of cars pulling up to the curb, drivers shouting into phones, families hugging with loud, theatrical joy. I waited. The sun beat down on the concrete. I shifted my weight from one foot to the other. After 45 minutes, my phone buzzed. A text from David. "Traffic is a nightmare, Dad. Can you grab a rideshare? We'll pay you back." I knew Atlanta traffic. I also knew my son. I texted back a simple okay. I didn't mention that I had already paid for the flight myself. I didn't mention the check folded in my wallet. The driver was a young man with music thumping low from his speakers. He called me sir and didn't try to make conversation. I was grateful for that. I watched the city slide by, a blur of glass and steel and green trees fighting for space. It had changed so much since I was stationed at Fort Benning decades ago. David and his wife, Brenda, lived in a new kind of neighborhood. The houses were enormous, pressed close together, each one a slight variation of the one next to it. They had big, important-looking front doors and lawns that were an almost unnatural shade of green. My house, back home, was small and made of brick. My lawn was whatever shade of green the good Lord decided to give me that season. Brenda opened the door before I could ring the bell. She was already talking. "Arthur, there you are." We were getting so worried. "The traffic is just impossible, isn't it? David is on a work call. He feels terrible. Let me get your bags." She didn't look worried. She looked annoyed. Her smile was tight, a quick flash of white teeth that didn't reach her eyes. She smelled of expensive perfume, a sharp floral scent that made my nose itch. "I can manage my own bags, Brenda," I said. My voice sounded rough from the dry airplane air. She took the garment bag from me anyway. "Nonsense. Let's get you settled. Michael is so excited you're here. My grandson, Michael. He was the reason for the trip, the reason for the suit, the reason for the check. He was graduating from college. A fine young man, smart and with a good heart. He was the one who called me every Sunday, not out of obligation, but because he seemed to actually want to know how I was doing. He asked about my garden. He asked if I was still working on the old Ford in the garage. The guest room was at the back of the house, overlooking a pristine patio with a built-in barbecue that looked like it had never been used. Everything was beige. The walls, the carpet, the bedding. It was a room designed by someone who wanted to make sure nothing left a mark. I laid my suitcase on a bench at the foot of the bed. Brenda had hung my suit in the closet. "We're having dinner at 8, she said from the doorway. "Just something casual. The graduation is tomorrow morning, so we need to be up early. I'll be ready," I said. She nodded, her eyes flicking around the room as if checking for dust. "Great. Just great." Then she was gone. I sat on the edge of the bed. The silence in the room was different from the silence in my own house. My silence was full of familiar sounds. The hum of the old refrigerator, the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall, the distant bark of a neighbor's dog. This silence was empty. It was the silence of a place where no one really lived. I took my wallet out of my jacket pocket. I unfolded the check. It was written on my personal bank stationery, the kind with my full name, Arthur James Dubois, printed at the top. The penmanship was neat, practiced. I had been a carpenter for 40 years, and I believed in precision. Paid to the order of Michael David Dubois. In the memo line, from Morehouse, "Your grandmother would be so proud." The amount was significant. It was most of what was left from the sale of a small piece of land my father had bought decades ago. I had been saving it for something important. A legacy. My wife, Eleanor, had always dreamed of one of our own going to Morehouse. David had chosen a different path. But Michael had the focus, the drive. I folded the check and put it back in my wallet. I stood up and walked to the closet. I unzipped the garment bag. The charcoal wool fell solid under my fingers. I thought of Eleanor. She had helped me pick it out. "It's a suit for a man of substance, Arthur," she'd said. "It shows respect." I respected my grandson. I respected his achievement. I was here to show it. Dinner was, as promised, casual. So casual that David ate his standing up in the kitchen, scrolling through his phone with his free hand. He was a tall man, my son, but he had a way of hunching his shoulders that made him seem smaller. "Hey, Dad," he said, not looking up. "Sorry about the airport." "You know how it is, I know how it is," I said. Brenda had made a salad with grilled chicken. The chicken was dry. I ate slowly, listening to them talk about people I didn't know and problems I didn't understand. Something about a homeowners association meeting. Something about the stock market. Michael wasn't there. He was out with friends for a final celebration. "He'll be back late," Brenda said, noticing my gaze toward the empty chair. "You'll see him in the morning." The next morning, I was up before anyone else. I found a coffee maker and brewed a pot. It was one of those complicated machines with a dozen buttons. I just pressed the biggest one. The coffee came out weak, but it was hot and black. I took a cup out to the silent patio and watched the sun come up. The air was already warm. I thought about my own small porch, my rocking chair, the smell of my climbing roses. I showered and shaved with care. I used the old-fashioned safety razor I'd traveled with for 50 years. I took my time, making sure the line on my mustache was perfectly straight. I was a man who believed in details. Details were a form of respect. I put on my suit. The trousers hung just right. The jacket settled on my shoulders with a familiar weight. It was a part of me. I put on my good white shirt, the one I starched myself, and a simple, dark blue tie. I polished my black dress shoes until I could see my reflection in the toes. They were the same shoes I'd worn when I married Eleanor. I'd had them resoled 3 times. When I walked into the kitchen, David and Brenda were there. They were dressed. David wore a light gray suit that was fashionable and tight across the shoulders. Brenda had on a bright yellow dress that seemed too loud for the morning. David looked me up and down. He didn't smile. He exchanged a quick, tight glance with Brenda. I saw it. It was a look I had seen before. A look that said, "Here we go." Brenda was the one who spoke. She always was. She approached me with that same tight smile, her hands fluttering in the air as if she didn't know what to do with them. "Arthur," she started, her voice soft and careful. The voice you use on a child or a confused old man. "We're so glad you're here." "We are. But we were thinking, that suit, it's just a little dated." I stood perfectly still. I looked down at my sleeve. I looked at the crisp white cuff of my shirt. I looked at my polished shoes. "It's a good suit," I said. My voice was even. Of course," David cut in, finally looking at me directly. "It's a great suit, Dad, for other things. But for this, for Michael's pictures, it's just a little heavy. A little dark. It's a funeral suit, my wife's funeral," I thought. I didn't say it. Brenda stepped closer. "We just want everything to be perfect for Michael. You understand. The pictures will last forever. We actually picked something up for you. Just in case." She disappeared for a moment and came back holding a hanger. On it was a tan linen blazer and a pair of light-colored trousers. They looked flimsy. They looked like something a man would wear on a cruise ship. "It won't fit," I said. It was a simple statement of fact. My shoulders were broader than that. My arms were longer. "We got the largest size they had," David said, his voice taking on a familiar edge of impatience. "Just try it, Dad. For Michael." I looked at the flimsy clothes. I looked at my son's face, tight with irritation. I looked at my daughter-in-law's pleading, false smile. They didn't see me. They saw a problem. A prop in their perfect family photo that wasn't quite right. An old piece of furniture that needed to be reupholstered to match the new decor. And then I heard it. A whisper from the hallway. I have good hearing. Always have. It was Brenda, a sharp, sibilant hiss to David. Just make him change. It's embarrassing. And David's reply, low and weary. I know. It's like he wants to look like a sharecropper. Something inside me didn't break. It clicked into place. A lock turning. A switch being thrown. It was a moment of absolute, cold clarity. The hurt was there, a deep, familiar ache. But this time, something else was there with it. A decision. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at them, standing there with their flimsy offering and their whispered insults. No, I said. The word was quiet, but it filled the sterile kitchen. I will wear my suit. Brenda's smile vanished. David's jaw tightened. He opened his mouth to argue, but then the doorbell rang. Michael was there, beaming, his cap and gown draped over his arm. Grandpa, he shouted, his face breaking into a huge, genuine grin. He came over and wrapped me in a hug that smelled of soap and youthful excitement. You're here. You look great. So sharp. He pulled back and looked at me, his eyes shining. That's a powerful suit, Grandpa. You look like you mean business. Over his shoulder, I saw the look on David and Brenda's faces. It was a mixture of fury and defeat. I smiled at my grandson. A real smile. I'm proud of you, son, I said. Let's go see you walk across that stage. At the ceremony, I sat between David and Brenda. They were silent, radiating a cold anger. They clapped when Michael's name was called. They took pictures with their phones. I sat and watched. I felt a strange sense of distance, as if I were watching a movie. I was there, but I wasn't. They had made me a ghost in my own life, and I was finally starting to understand what that meant. During the endless speeches, I thought about the check in my wallet. For Morehouse, your grandmother would be so proud. Eleanor would be proud of Michael, but she would not be proud of this. She would not be proud of her son or the woman he married. She would not be proud of how they treated her husband. After the ceremony, there were pictures on the lawn. Endless combinations. David, Brenda, and Michael. Michael and Brenda. Michael and David. Then Brenda, with that bright, false smile, said, "Let's get one with Grandpa." I stood next to Michael. He put his arm around my shoulder. David and Brenda stood on his other side, leaving a small, deliberate gap between me and them. I looked at the camera. I did not smile. I looked directly into the lens. I wanted to be sure that the man in the dark, dated suit was seen. I wanted them to have a picture of the man they had insulted. Later, at the celebratory lunch at a loud, expensive restaurant, David leaned over. "Dad, we still need to figure out that first tuition payment for Michael. He's so excited about Morehouse." I looked at him. I took a sip of my iced tea. "Is that so?" I said. It wasn't a question. I didn't stay for the whole weekend. I told them I wasn't feeling well, that the trip had taken a lot out of me. Brenda offered to change my flight with a little too much enthusiasm. Michael was the only one who seemed genuinely disappointed. "You're leaving already, Grandpa?" he asked, his face falling. "I wanted to show you the campus another time, son," I said, putting a hand on his arm. "I'm very proud of you. Don't you ever forget that." "I won't," he said. "Thanks for coming." It meant everything. It meant everything to him. It meant nothing to them. The math of it was simple and brutal. Back in the beige guest room, I packed my bag. I took the suit off, folded it carefully, and placed it back in the garment bag. It felt the same. Solid. Respectful. It hadn't changed. I sat on the edge of the bed and took out my wallet. I took out the check. I looked at it for a long time. My neat handwriting. The name of the school. The name of my grandson. Then I tore it in half. And then I tore it into quarters. And then I tore it into tiny, precise pieces. I dropped them into the little beige trash can next to the little beige desk. I did not make a scene. I did not say a word. I just quietly rescinded the check. And with it, a whole lot more. The flight home was quiet. I had a window seat. I watched the clouds. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt clean, like a slate that had been wiped. The decision was made. The work was just beginning. My house was waiting for me. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air was cool and still, smelling faintly of old wood and the lemon polish I used on the furniture. The grandfather clock in the hall ticked its steady rhythm. It was the heartbeat of my home. I set my bags down. I was home, but it felt different. It was no longer a place I was keeping for someone else. It was mine. I walked through the quiet rooms. My armchair, the leather worn smooth and soft in the exact shape of my body. The small table beside it, holding a book of poetry and my reading glasses. In the kitchen, my coffee pot, a simple percolator that had been my father's, sat on the stove. I filled it with water, spooned in the dark, rich coffee grounds, and set it on the flame. The smell, as it began to perk, was the smell of every morning of my adult life. It was the smell of stability. While the coffee brewed, I went to my desk. It was a heavy oak thing I had built myself 40 years ago. The surface was scarred with the marks of projects and paperwork, a map of my life. I pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook and a good pen. I opened to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote a date. Then I made a list. 1. Call Evelyn Reed. 2. Bank. Joint account. 3. Safe deposit box. 4. Workshop. 5. Will. It was a short list, but the weight of each item was immense. Each one was a brick. I was building a wall. Or maybe I was taking one down. The coffee was ready. I poured a mug, black, and carried it to the back porch. I sat in my rocking chair. My roses were in full bloom, a riot of deep red against the dark green leaves. My small patch of tomatoes was starting to show fruit. I had planted them myself. I had tied them to the stakes myself. They were mine. I thought about David's yard. That perfect chemical green, maintained by a service. He didn't know the feel of dirt under his fingernails. He didn't know the satisfaction of eating a tomato you had grown from a seed. He had outsourced the fundamentals. Maybe he had outsourced his heart, too. My phone, which had been silent, buzzed. A text from Michael. Landed safe, Grandpa. Hope you're feeling better. Love you. I typed back. Landed safe. Feeling stronger already. Love you too. Another buzz. Brenda. Arthur. I hope you're not being dramatic. We were only trying to help. Call us when you get in. I read the message. I felt the familiar sting of the word dramatic. It was what they called any emotion I had that was inconvenient for them. I deleted it. Not replied. Deleted. The small act felt significant. It was a choice. Silence was my reply. The next morning, I started on my list. At 9 o'clock sharp, I called Evelyn Reed's office. She had been my lawyer for 20 years. She handled the sale of the land for me. She handled Eleanor's estate. She was a sharp, no-nonsense woman who wore her hair in a tight bun and never wasted a word. Arthur, she said, her voice crisp. To what do I owe the pleasure? I need to make some changes, Evelyn, I said. To my will, and some other arrangements. Are you unwell? She asked. It was a direct question, not a nosy one. I've never been better, I said. I've just gained some clarity. There was a pause on the line. I could hear the faint scratching of her pen. I have an opening tomorrow at 10. Will that work? I'll be there, I said. Number 1 on the list was crossed off. Next, the bank. I drove my old Ford pickup. It was a 78, and I had rebuilt the engine myself. It rumbled with a low, satisfying power. It was a machine that understood honesty. If something was wrong, it told you. It didn't whisper insults behind your back. The bank was cool and quiet. I had been a customer there for 50 years. The manager, a young man named Mr. Harris, greeted me by name. Mr. Dubois, good to see you. What can we do for you today? I sat across the desk from him. I have a joint savings account here, I said, with my son, David Dubois. I opened it for emergencies. Mr. Harris typed something into his computer. Yes, I see it. Account ending in 4582-inch. I need to remove him from it, I said. And I need to move the funds to a new, individual account under my name only. He looked up from his screen. His professional mask was perfect, but I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He probably saw this sort of thing all the time, but usually the children were doing it to the parents, not the other way around. Of course, he said smoothly. Since you're the primary account holder, you have every right to do that. We'll just need you to sign a few forms. He printed the papers. I read them carefully. I always read everything. I signed my name where required. My signature was steady. Arthur James Dubois. It looked solid on the page. This will take effect immediately, Mr. Harris said, stamping the forms. David will no longer have access to these funds or the account. Thank you, I said. Number 2 was done. From there, I went to the safe deposit box. It was in the same bank down in the vault. I had added David's name to it years ago when Eleanor got sick. I thought it was the responsible thing to do, in case something happened to me. Inside the box were the deed to my house, my military discharge papers, Eleanor's jewelry, and a few old family photographs. I took everything out. I placed the contents in the simple briefcase I had brought with me. I handed the empty metal box and my key to the attendant. "I'd like to close this out," I said. Another form, another signature. Number 3 was done. Driving home, I felt lighter. The truck felt more responsive. The sun seemed brighter. I was taking back the pieces of my life, one signature at a time. These are not emotional acts. They were practical. They were the methodical work of a man taking control of his own affairs. The emotion had come and gone in that beige room in Atlanta. This was the aftermath. This was the cleanup. When I got home, I didn't go inside the house. I went to the garage, my workshop. The air inside was thick with the smell of sawdust, motor oil, and old wood. This was my sanctuary. Every tool had its place. Saws hung on one wall, sharp and clean. Wrenches and sockets were arranged by size in their drawers. My workbench, the one I'd built with my father when I was a boy, stood in the center of the room. It was made of heavy maple, its surface a geography of gouges, stains, and burns. A history of work. On a shelf above the bench was a toolbox. It was a beautiful old wooden box with brass fittings. I had bought it from Michael when he was 10. I had started filling it for him, one tool at a time, for birthdays and Christmases. A good hammer, a set of screwdrivers with hardwood handles, a small hand plane. I had imagined the day I would give it to him, a rite of passage. I had imagined teaching him how to use them. But David had always interfered. "Dad, he doesn't need that stuff. He's going to work with his brain, not his hands," as if the two were mutually exclusive. As if working with your hands wasn't a form of thinking. I took the toolbox down from the shelf. It was heavy. I opened the lid. The tools were pristine and used, a monument to a future that never happened. I began to empty it. I took each tool out and placed it on the workbench. The hammer felt balanced in my palm. The chisels were still in their protective wax. They were good tools. They deserved to be used. I put them away in my own tool chests, finding a place for each one among its working brothers. When the box was empty, I stood for a moment, looking at it. It was just a box now. A beautiful, empty box. I closed the lid, slid it under the workbench, and left it there. This was number 4. It was the hardest one yet. It was the only one that made my hands tremble. Not with anger, with sorrow. A quiet grief for the boy I had wanted to teach, and the man my son had prevented him from knowing. My phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but it had an Atlanta area code. I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a notification popped up. A new message. I listened to it, standing there in the scent of sawdust. It was Brenda. Her voice was high and tight. "Arthur, David just got an alert from the bank. It says his name was removed from the savings account. I am sure this is just some kind of mistake. You need to call the bank and fix it immediately. And you need to call us. This is not funny. You're worrying us sick, worrying us sick." The lie was so bald, so obvious, it was almost impressive. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the money. They were worried about the loss of control. The emergency fund wasn't for my emergency. It was for theirs. I deleted the voicemail. I did not call them back. Their panic was a confirmation. It was the sound of a door being locked and them realizing they were on the outside. That evening, the call started in earnest. David, then Brenda, then David again. I let them all go. I turned the ringer off. I sat on my porch and watched the fireflies begin their nightly dance. The phone inside buzzed and buzzed, a frantic, distant insect. It had nothing to do with me. The next morning at 10, I was sitting in Evelyn Reed's office. It smelled of old paper and leather-bound books. It was a serious place. Evelyn sat across her wide mahogany desk, her hands folded, her expression unreadable. So she said, "Clarity," I told her everything. The airport, the beige room, the suit, the whispered insults, the check, the bank account. I told it to her in a flat, even voice. I was not asking for sympathy. I was providing information. When I was done, she was silent for a long moment. She looked at me, her gaze sharp and intelligent. "And what is it you want to do now, Arthur?" she asked. "I want to change my will," I said. "Right now, my house and all my assets go to David. I want that changed. To whom do you want them to go?" This was the question I had been thinking about all night. "I want to set up a trust," I said. "And I want to sell the house." Evelyn's eyebrows went up just slightly. It was the most emotion I had ever seen her show. "Sell the house? Arthur, you've lived there for 50 years. The house is for a family," I said. "I'm not a family anymore. I'm just a man. I need a place for a man, not a museum of what used to be." I looked her in the eye. "My son thinks the house is his. He's been waiting for me to die so he can have it. I've decided not to be so accommodating." A small, thin smile touched Evelyn's lips. It was gone in an instant. "I see. And the trust? Who would be the beneficiary?" "My grandson, Michael," I said, "but with conditions. The money is not to be given to him as a lump sum. It is to be used for his education, or to start a business, or to buy his own first home. And it is to be managed by a trustee who is not me and who is not his father. And if David contests it, he will," I said. "That's why I'm here. I want it to be ironclad. I want a letter of competency from my doctor. I want every I dotted and every T crossed. I want it to be my final word." Evelyn nodded slowly. "And the money from the house sale?" "It goes into the trust," I said. "All of it." I leaned forward. "Evelyn, my son and his wife see me as a bank account, as an inconvenience, as a relic. They have made it clear that my presence in their life is conditional on my utility and my silence. I am choosing to be silent, and I am choosing to withdraw my utility." She picked up her pen. "All right, Arthur. Let's get to work. Let's build your fortress." Number 5 on my list. The will. It was in motion. The next few weeks were a blur of methodical action. I got the letter from my doctor. I had a realtor come to the house, a nice woman who didn't press me for reasons. She just saw the good bones of the place, the solid construction, the care I had put into it. She told me it would sell quickly. The for sale sign in the front yard was the first public declaration. It was a clear signal. It took less than a day for the explosion to happen. My phone rang. It was David. I had been blocking his number, but he called from his work phone. I answered out of instinct. "A for sale sign?" he yelled, his voice cracking with disbelief and fury. "A for sale sign? What are you doing?" "That's my house. My house. Not our house, not the family home, my house." He had said it. The truth, finally, in a moment of anger. "No, son," I said, my voice calm. "It's my house. The deed has my name on it, and I'm selling it." "Why?" he sputtered. "Are you broke? Did you get into some kind of trouble? Is this because of that stupid suit? Are you trying to punish us?" "Punish? Trouble? Stupid suit." He listed all the wrong reasons, one after another. He couldn't conceive of the real one, that this wasn't about him. It was about me. "This conversation is over, David," I said. "No, it is not. I'm coming down there. We're going to talk about this. The door will be locked," I said. And I hung up the phone. I blocked his work number. I knew he would come, but I would be ready. In the meantime, another kind of message had arrived. A thick envelope with Michael's handwriting on it. It wasn't a text or an email. It was a letter, several pages long. I opened it with care. "Grandpa," it began, "I don't know what's going on. Mom and Dad are losing their minds. Dad is screaming about the house, and Mom is crying and saying you've lost your senses. But I don't think you have. I think you're just done." The words hit me. "I think you're just done." He saw it. He understood. "I want to apologize," the letter continued. "I didn't see it when it was happening, but I see it now. The way they talk about you. The way they treat you like a chore. The comment about your suit. I heard them. I was in the hall. I was so angry and ashamed I didn't know what to say. I should have said something. I'm sorry I didn't. You look like a king in that suit, Grandpa. A king. They don't get it. They're mad about the money for school. Dad called Morehouse and found out the check was never sent. He thinks you're doing it to hurt me. But I know you're not. This isn't about me. It's about them. I don't want their money, Grandpa. I'll get loans. I'll work. I'll figure it out. What I want is you. I don't want to lose you because of their foolishness and their pride. Whatever you're doing, I trust you. I love you. Please don't shut me out. Your grandson, Michael. I folded the letter and put it in the drawer of my desk. My eyes were wet. It was the first time I'd cried through this whole ordeal. Not for the hurt they had caused, but for the love I had not lost. He saw me. The boy saw the man. I found a piece of my own stationery. I wrote a short note. Michael, thank you for your letter. It means more than you know. You're not shut out. You could never be. We will talk soon when the dust settles. Be a good man. I love you. Grandpa. I put it in an envelope and mailed it that afternoon. It felt like sending a signal flare into the night, letting one ship know that I was still here. A few days later, I was at the barber shop. My Saturday ritual. George's barbershop was one of the last real places left. It smelled of talcum powder and conversation. George was my age. We had served in Vietnam together, in different divisions, but the bond was the same. He draped the cloth around my neck. Heard you're selling the old place, Arthur, he said, his voice a low rumble. The barbershop was the nerve center of the neighborhood. News traveled fast. That's right, I said. Folks are saying your boy is fit to be tied. He'll get over it, I said. George started clipping. The sound of the scissors a steady snip, snip, snip. A man's house is his castle, he said, to no one in particular. He can sell if he wants. He can burn it down if he wants. He can leave it to whoever he damn well pleases. An older man in the next chair, Mr. Henderson, grunted in agreement. That's the God's honest truth. Children these days think they're owed a damn inheritance. An inheritance is a gift. You don't earn it by just being born. I sat there listening to them. I didn't have to explain myself. I didn't have to justify my actions. They understood the unspoken language of dignity. They knew what it was like to be a black man of a certain age in a world that was always trying to tell you who you were, what you were worth. When George was done, he brushed the hair from my collar. He didn't charge me. He just clapped me on the shoulder. You're looking 10 years younger, Arthur, he said. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. I walked out into the sunshine feeling steady. My ally wasn't just my grandson. It was a whole generation of men who understood. The house sold in 2 weeks. I had to start packing. 50 years of a life. It was a daunting task. I started in the attic. Old photo albums. Eleanor's wedding dress, sealed in a box. My old army uniform. I found a box of David's childhood drawings. Stick figures of a smiling family. I looked at them for a long time. Where did that smiling boy go? I didn't throw them out. I put them in a box labeled David. I would have it sent to him. These were his memories, not mine. My memories were different. I was in the garage, sorting through tools, when they finally arrived. A sleek, black rental car pulled into my driveway. David and Brenda got out. They looked like they were marching into battle. I didn't go to the door. I just kept working. I heard the doorbell ring. Once. Twice. Then a frantic, angry buzzing. Then pounding on the door. Dad, I know you're in there. Open this door. I wiped my hands on a rag and walked through the house. I unlocked the deadbolt and opened the door, but I did not move from the threshold. I blocked the way with my body. They stood on my porch, faces flushed. David looked older than I'd ever seen him. Lines of stress etched around his mouth. Brenda's face was a mask of furious indignation. What is the meaning of this, Arthur? She demanded, skipping any greeting. The sign, the bank ignoring our calls. What kind of game are you playing? There is no game, I said calmly. These are my decisions. Your decisions? David scoffed. You're selling our home. The house I grew up in. I grew up in a shack in Alabama with a dirt floor. David, I said, my voice still even. This is the house I built. With my hands. And with your mother's heart. You just lived in it. There's a difference. The truth of that silenced him for a second. Brenda stepped forward. Your son is worried sick about you, she said, trying a different tactic, her voice dripping with false concern. He thinks you're not well, that someone is influencing you. This isn't like you. You're right, I said. It isn't. The man you're used to would have stayed quiet. He would have worn the tan jacket. He would have let you call his suit embarrassing. He would have let you call him a sharecropper. The color drained from both their faces. They looked at each other, a flicker of pure panic in their eyes. They knew I had heard. They had hoped I hadn't, or that I was too old or too slow to understand. That's not what we meant, David stammered. It was just a figure of speech. I heard what you said. I repeated. I let the words hang in the air between us. And I heard Brenda agree. I saw the look on your faces. For the first time, I really saw it. And I understood. I am an embarrassment to you. A problem to be managed. My home is just real estate you're waiting to inherit. My money is just a convenience for you. I looked directly at my son. You were not worried about me at the airport. You were not worried about my feelings when you insulted the suit I wore to bury your mother. You were not worried about me. You were worried about appearances. And now, you are not worried about my well-being. You are worried about your inheritance. Brenda found her voice first. This is unbelievable. After everything we do for you, what is it you do for me? I asked a genuine question. You invite me to your home and make me feel like a stranger. You call me on holidays out of a sense of duty. You have never once in 10 years asked me if I am lonely since Eleanor died. You have never asked me what I want. You only tell me what you require. David's face crumpled. For a moment, he looked like that little boy in the drawings, lost and confused. Dad, I'm sorry. It was the first time he had apologized, but it was too late. An apology is a bridge. But you can't build a bridge after the other side of the canyon has already fallen into the sea. I know you are, I said, and I believe he was. Sorry that he'd been caught. Sorry that there were consequences. But the decisions are made. The house is sold. My will has been changed. My affairs are in order. I stepped back. I have work to do. You should go. You can't just cut us out. Brenda cried, her voice rising to a shriek. He is your son. We are your family. Family is more than blood, I said. It's respect. You forgot that. Or maybe you never knew, and then I did the final thing. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently. The click of the latch was the only sound. It was the sound of the end. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door for a moment. I felt no triumph, only a deep, profound sadness, and a deeper, more profound peace. I found a small, clean apartment in a quiet complex on the other side of town. It had 2 bedrooms, one for me, one for my workshop. The management was hesitant about the noise of my tools, but I explained I worked mostly with my hands. Carving, finishing, the quiet work. They agreed to a trial period. The movers came and took the few things I was keeping. My armchair, my desk, my bed, my record player, and my collection of blues albums. The box of Eleanor's things, and all my tools. I watched the big truck pull away from the house on the hill for the last time. It looked empty already, a shell. I didn't look back. My new life was simple. I woke up with the sun. I made my coffee in the old percolator. I read the newspaper. I spent my days in my new, smaller workshop. I took the empty wooden toolbox, the one meant for Michael, and I began to work on it. I sanded it down, refinished the wood until it glowed. I polished the brass fittings. I was making it into something new. The money from the house sale sat in the trust, managed by Evelyn. It was a formidable sum. I had her draw up the paperwork for a new scholarship, the Arthur and Eleanor Dubois Foundation for Skilled Trades. It would provide funding for young people who wanted to become carpenters, mechanics, plumbers, electricians. People who wanted to work with their hands. The first check, the one that would have gone to Morehouse, was its first donation. It felt right. It felt like a legacy Eleanor would have understood. I had a new phone number. Only 2 people had it, Michael and Evelyn. Michael called me every Sunday, just like before. We talked about his classes. He had taken out loans, and he had 2 part-time jobs. He was tired, but his voice was full of pride. He was making his own way. "Dad's trying to get my address from me," he told me one day. "He wants to come see me. He says he wants to fix things. What do you want to do?" I asked him. I told him he needs to fix things with himself first. Michael said, "And then he needs to write you a letter. A real one. Not a text message." I was proud of him. He was becoming a man of substance. Life settled into a new rhythm. A quiet, steady beat. The ticking of a clock in a silent apartment. The soft scratch of a needle on a John Lee Hooker record. The rhythmic scrape of a hand plane on a piece of wood. I was no longer waiting. Not for a phone call. Not for a holiday invitation. Not for death. I was simply living. I went to the barber shop. I had coffee with George. I tended to 3 tomato plants in pots on my small balcony. I was not happy, not in the loud, bright way David and Brenda thought of happiness. I was something better. I was steady. I was whole. One day a letter arrived. It was forwarded by Evelyn's office. The handwriting was David's. It was thick. I put it on my desk. I didn't open it. Not yet. It sat there for a week. I would look at it every morning. I wasn't afraid of what it said. I was simply deciding if it needed to be read. The old me would have torn it open, desperate for the apology, for the reconciliation. The new me knew that my peace did not depend on his remorse. My wholeness was not in his hands. It was in mine. On the 8th day, I picked it up. I made my coffee, sat in my armchair, and opened the envelope. It was many pages long, filled with his messy, sloping handwriting. He wrote about his childhood. He wrote about his mother. He wrote about being afraid of disappointing me. He wrote that he was ashamed. He wrote that he was sorry. For the suit, for the words, for the years of quiet neglect. He didn't make excuses. He didn't ask for the house or the money. He just asked at the end if he could call me. Not to ask for anything, just to hear my voice. I read it twice. I folded it and put it away. It was a real letter. A start. I thought about what to do. The door I had closed so gently, was it locked forever? Maybe not. Maybe it was just a door that now only opened from my side. I was the one who held the key. I sat down at my desk. I took out the refinished wooden toolbox. It was beautiful now. Not a failed gift, but an object of its own worth. I thought about Michael. I thought about the scholarship. I thought about David. A man is not defined by the wounds he receives, but by how he chooses to heal them. Some wounds you heal by cutting away the diseased flesh. Some you heal by letting the air get to them. I had done the cutting. Now, maybe it was time for the air. I would not call him. Not yet. The silence had been my tool, and it had done its work. It had carved out a space for me to exist on my own terms. I would not give that up easily. But the letter was a seed, planted in new ground. Maybe in time something would grow. Something new. Something honest. For now, I had my work. I had my peace. I had my quiet room. My music, the smell of wood polish. I was Arthur James Dubois, a man of substance, in a suit or out of it. I was seen, finally, because I had finally seen myself. And that was an inheritance no one could ever take from me. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to know they're not alone. They need to know that quiet dignity is a language all its own. And sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is close a door gently, and then, in the silence that follows, begin to build a new one. One that only you have the key to.